I'm Jeff Mays, Metro reporter for the New York Times, filling in for Sam Roberts, who's on vacation. Today, we'll hear from a Times real estate reporter about what Barbie's Dreamhouse says about American reality. But first, migration is in the news again as recent arrivals begin their journey to become citizens. Joining me today is Hurubie Meko, who covers criminal justice at the Times. Hurubie looked into the obstacles facing migrants as they seek asylum in the United States. Hurubie, I understand you followed a migrant family during your research for this piece. Can you tell me why they're seeking asylum in New York City specifically?
Sure. So my co-reporter actually spoke to several families throughout the story's process. And some of the reasons that they gave are very typical for many migrants who are coming into the U.S. One family talked about being extorted by violent groups in their neighborhoods, and they just made it impossible to live and work where they were living at the time. So they felt the need for their safety to leave. And then one demographic or one group of people who have been covered pretty extensively last year are Venezuelans who are leaving an authoritarian government, an economy that collapsed very quickly, and just to survive, many have made the trek. And at the border, the numbers of Venezuelans who have crossed over last year were just hitting record numbers. I think by mid-fall, it was about 150,000, where in previous years it was much smaller.
So are the migrants getting the help they need to file for asylum? It's a very complicated process, right?
It is. It can be a very complicated process, and it's very intensive. So there are a lot of supplements that you would have to give with a 12-page application, which is all in English. It has a lot of questions, and just in speaking with immigration attorneys, they have said that even getting one question wrong or missing something will cause the application to be sent back. So somebody doing that on their own, it can be very hard, and the whole process is in English. So for many newly arrived migrants, their English might not be at the point where they can handle some legal document like that. So they do need a lot of support, and many do not get that because unlike in many other court systems in the U.S., immigration court, you do not get an attorney.
New York has really been a place that migrants have come, 81,000 since last spring.
Right.
Currently 50,000 are in care and shelter. Is there any specific reason why New York is such a hot spot for asylum seekers to come to?
That's a good question. I mean, as it's been covered pretty extensively, last year there were large numbers of people being bused here from other states like Texas, and I believe that that is still continuing. So for many people, that seems to be a way that they're ending up in New York. Others may have family or different networks or have heard that New York is somewhere that they can go and find work and resettle.
And you know, the city is dealing with this massive influx. How has that been going? Has that been a smooth process? It seems like it would be pretty difficult to absorb that number of people that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor and the city in general have just been pivoting from different options or different strategies to try to handle the number of migrants who have been coming in to the city and also staying in shelters. So over the course of the year, there have been different options that the mayor has looked into, from maybe housing people on ships, maybe housing people in gymnasiums for just triage centers or just very emergency shelter situations. So it seems like it's been a very dynamic response and a very try it, and if it doesn't work or whenever they do try it, there may be a response from the community and then just pivoting.
I know in my own reporting on this issue, when I talk to some of the asylum seekers, one of the things they say most is that they want to work. And Mayor Adams has also called for the federal government to expedite work permits. Is that happening? Are the new arrivals able to get work permits? Are they working anyway without those work permits?
From what I'm hearing and my own reporting as well, many are just finding work because that is the one main goal that many of the families have, is once they get here is to make money and become self-sufficient. However, this is kind of why the asylum applications have gone up quite a bit, likely. But one way to get work permits is to successfully apply for asylum. So 150 days after you have successfully submitted an application for asylum, you can get work authorization to work while you await your case to be adjudicated in the system. So that is one way, but because it can be so difficult to apply, many people just start working.
So you talked about this application for asylum being very complicated, 12 pages. You have to get everything right. I'm wondering, how long does it take once you file that application? Is it immediate? Does it take a year, 2 years? What are we talking about?
It varies. So we've been told that it can take anywhere from 5 to 7 years for a case to actually work its way through the courts and work its way through the whole adjudication process. And at this point, one thing that has become a problem, according to immigration attorneys and advocates, is just how backed up the immigration courts are. I believe last year it was over 2 million cases, and that's not just asylum. It's across the country, across the board on various different immigration cases. So there is quite a bit of a backlog and not really enough judges to work through that backlog at this point. I mean, one immigration attorney I spoke to called it a possibly untenable situation at this point.
Wow. I wonder if the migrants, the asylum seekers themselves, do they understand this process? Are they aware, for example, that they have a year to complete this process? Do they understand all the intricacies of applying for asylum?
What we found in just speaking with different families over the past few months, it's just not everyone does. For many, they're already going through the immigration process, going to ICE appointments, going to their immigration court hearings, and even trying to figure that out. So for some, they just don't even realize that they have this 1-year time clock on when they have to apply for asylum. So they're going through multiple processes and also just coming into a new country, going through the shelter system, trying to figure out how to work and live here. It's just a lot going on.
Do we know what happens when families miss these deadlines? And also you reported about how some migrants need important paperwork, and that paperwork is sometimes being sent to wrong addresses. I mean, it just seems like a really complicated, difficult process. What happens if they make a mistake along the way during this process?
Just in speaking with attorneys, there are some reasons for why if you do miss that deadline, like if there's something that hindered you from it, or it was just an honest mistake, or whatever it may be. There are exceptions, but you would, from what they've told us, you would really need the expertise to kind of figure that out, and also legal assistance would probably be your best guidance at that point. So like what you were mentioning about the missing documents, that's something that I heard a lot in the fall, is that when people were being brought to New York City, or when they were coming to New York City, their paperwork might be going elsewhere. Or some advocates were saying, agencies, that they were getting paperwork for people that they had just never met before. So they knew that there was somebody out there that was missing very important paperwork and might not know where to go. So it just, from what they described it as in the fall and what I'm hearing now, it just seems like there are just a lot of different ways that you can get lost in the system or miss a court date. Right. And even just trying to get into ICE appointments, we saw long lines of people waiting like the night before, because they've heard that if you don't make it in for your appointment, if you're not one of the 500 people, for example, that you're just going to miss it.
Now, there are nonprofit groups stepping into the breach here to help. One of them you mentioned was WIN, which is a nonprofit provider of shelter for women and children. Tell me what WIN is trying to do to help the asylum seekers complete their applications and meet the deadlines.
Sure. So WIN is a great example. And from what they've told me, they are a shelter organization. So really, when they were getting migrant families in the beginning, they were focused on making sure that people had clothing, basic needs, that their basic needs were met, like food and everything else. And then in just speaking with families and in speaking with other organizations around the city, specifically like legal aid organizations, they realized that there was this 1-year deadline and that many of the families that they were working with did not know about it. So they started doing screenings and figuring out what month, like what date people had come into the country, and then figuring out how much time they had left and connecting them with legal assistance to make sure that they get that application in as quickly as possible. And
in addition to WIN, the city's also opened an Asylum Seeker Application Center. Tell me about that. How is that helping people meet the needs and apply for asylum?
Sure. So the city did announce the opening, or that they would be starting this application help center. And in just talking with some of the pro bono firms that are some of the firms that are giving pro bono assistance to the shelter, to the help center, it seems like they're still in the taking off process. So I don't actually know if they have started fully working with clients at this point. I believe they're in some sort of training and pilot program, but I've been told by the city that they hope to work with thousands of families and just helping them submit that initial application. So these attorneys would not be staying with these families through the entire process because it can take years, but just making sure that they're able to get that application in and successfully submitted.
Is there an end in sight? We've had 80,000 people since spring. Is that slowing down? Does the city have is optimistic about the number of people coming here? Where do you see this going?
That is a good question. I'm not exactly sure if I'm able to say if there is any kind of end in sight, but it seems like the number of people coming into the city has been pretty steady over the past months. As of June 21st, 25th, it's about 81,000 people over the past year. So I don't know if that exact pace will continue, but it seems at this point that families will continue to come to New York through the system.
And there are risks for migrants who don't apply for asylum or don't qualify for asylum. What kind of risks are those people facing once they go through the process and don't meet the qualification?
Sure. So one thing that we've heard consistently from advocates and immigration attorneys is that if they do not successfully apply for asylum, that there are not many other options for them to apply for and get some sort of status and stay and work in the U.S. So for many people, the fear is that they will fall into the category of undocumented immigrants who are working in situations where they may be vulnerable to exploitation and may not be getting the protections that they would get if they had documents to work.
Thank you, Hurubie Meko, for coming on and providing some crucial background to a complicated political and social issue. Up next, we take a look at Barbie's Dreamhouse and the American Dream. Barbie's Dreamhouse. It's just a toy, right? Well, it's complicated. I'm sitting here with New York Times real estate reporter Anna Kodé to talk about the history and the societal implications of this popular American icon of the American dream. Anna, what a fun article that you wrote, just filled with graphics. And, tell me about writing this and what made you want to write about the Barbie Dreamhouse.
Sure. So I've been on real estate for about a year now. And before that, I was a reporter on the style section. So my brain was kind of wired to think about what is the real estate angle of whatever is happening in pop culture at the moment. And, hearing about the Barbie movie, of course, the answer to that is Dreamhouse.
Right. So in 1962, when the Dreamhouse first debuted, American women had trouble even buying homes on their own, right?
Right. Very few women actually owned homes in 1962. And that's because at that time, banks could legally deny a woman a mortgage simply because she was a woman or because she was divorced, and they had this host of stereotypes they would use against women for that. So this toy to young girls represented something that wasn't happening in the real world.
Right. Now, I'm curious, did you have a Barbie Dreamhouse growing up?
Actually, I did not, because they are, now they're about 4 feet tall, and I grew up mostly in apartments, so it wouldn't have fit.
So you didn't have enough space for the apartment?
No.
Oh, wow. So, one of the great things about your article is you sort of trace the evolution of the Barbie Dreamhouse along with the progression of, certain trends in American society. So I'm wondering, were you surprised to see that the Barbie Dreamhouse had also evolved as America had evolved?
I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, you see different design trends, housing trends, but also the effects of, policies and just social issues seep into how we approach real estate in real life, and the designers behind the toy kind of took hints from that as well. For example, in the 90s, that's when Americans were really obsessed with their houses being as big as possible, the era of the McMansion. And Barbie essentially moves into a McMansion as well in 1990. She has this glittery pink double column house.
Right. And, there have been various periods, right? So it started in 1962. What about the sexual revolution? How did the Barbie Dreamhouse address that?
Right. During the sexual revolution, that's when there was this thing called a fern bar, which was essentially a singles bar. And the decor in fern bars really mimicked interior design, like photos on walls, houseplants, things like that. And the idea was to make these bars look homey, to welcome women. And Barbie's townhouse in the 70s looked exactly like a fern bar. She had all these framed photos and plants and books, and the two really look alike.
Right. And then in the 1970s, as Americans abandoned cities for various reasons and moved to the suburbs, Barbie's Dreamhouse sort of followed suit, right?
Right. In 1979, that's when it looks like Barbie's moving out to the suburbs with, honestly, the rest of the country, too. She moves from this townhouse into this A-frame house that comes apart, and you can put it back together as well. And that's also the era of prefabricated houses, A-frame houses, and like we were saying, just a lot of Americans moving out of cities.
Right. And you also talked about, at one point you said the dream house sort of served as a subliminal, even subversive blueprint for children. What do you mean by that?
I think by that, as a child, when you're playing with this toy, it might not register to you all of these issues and policies that are kind of embedded into it. You're just playing with this toy, but that still somehow sticks with you as you grow older. I talked with one young woman who said that her design instincts now were formed by moving around furniture within her dream house as a child. And now when she got her own apartment, she was able to set it up pretty easily. And she was thinking back to how she was doing that same thing as a kid. But as a kid, you don't realize that.
Right, right. And, Barbie has kept up, the dream house has kept up with the times. So, 2008, we have the housing crisis, the mortgage crash. What happened during that period? Did Barbie feel the mortgage crash?
No, Barbie's dream house did not have a foreclosure, funnily. Who wants their toy to experience that? But yeah, the dream house has at times reflected these negative things in American society. Like, when you get to the pandemic, you see that the house is informed by the pandemic a bit. But in 2008, it's almost a direct counter. She has this 3-story house. She has a garage, a convertible. She has a pool in it too. And I guess it's a nice escape from whatever's happening in the housing market at the time.
Right. And has that always been the case with the Barbie dream house? It sort of reflects what's happening in society, but not necessarily all the down parts as well?
Exactly. I think the one constant is that it's a house that you want to aspire to have no matter what.
Right. Right. Now, the dream house has also gone high tech, right? And we have Alexas and Siris in our homes now, and we could turn on the lights. Has Barbie's dream house also changed with the times technologically?
Yes, there are now like buttons and things that make sounds and make other things go off. Yeah, and it is, I think, taking that even a step further, the house today is very Instagrammable. It's definitely informed by the algorithms that are also informing how we decorate our homes in real life.
Right. Now, with Barbie, there are dozens of different ethnicities that are represented, by the dolls. I'm wondering, do the Barbie dream houses also represent those sort of ethnicities as well?
They don't actually, and Mattel said they don't, but there are ways in which one's identity and background can inform what their home looks like. And I spoke to scholars studying this, and it can be as simple as, the spices in your kitchen or the art that you choose. But the dream house itself isn't quite there yet.
Right. Why do you think that is? Is there a particular reason? Because I'm sure there are little girls of color buying the Barbie dream house today.
Well, Mattel says it's because, the dream house is meant for everybody, but I think it's just the nuances of that haven't made it into the toy world quite yet, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there was an interesting part of your story where you talked about they had a Barbie who used a wheelchair, but they designed the dream house and it didn't fit her wheelchair. How did they address that, and what do you think the significance of that is?
Right. In 2019, that's when the company released a Barbie in a wheelchair, but children quickly found out that Barbie couldn't fit into the elevator in her own dream house. And there was a lot of criticism, and they ended up re-releasing that same dream house, just now with an elevator that could fit it. And, you know, I think that's one of those things where they're trying to diversify, but they're not thinking of all of the different ways that you need to do that.
Right, right. Owning a house has long been a part of the American dream. Talk a little bit more about owning a Barbie dream house, how that connects to the actual sort of American dream part of being a homeowner, owning your own home.
Right. That's a great question. You know, as a kid, it instills in you that a house is a dream, you know, the American dream. From a very young age, you're literally playing with this concept of, I want to have a house one day. But also, the toy itself is a status symbol. You know, it retails for almost $200. And like we started this conversation, it's big. You have to have a space large enough to fit it.
Right. And it's still selling today, right? People are still buying the Barbie Dreamhouse today.
Yes, the company actually says that it sells one every 2 minutes.
Wow. And it's not just the dream house itself, right? They actually came up with a sort of ingenious marketing technique where you buy the house, but that's only the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And the inventor of Barbie, Ruth Handler, along with her husband, Elliot Handler, spoke about this from the very beginning in the 60s, that they made this doll, but a really great way to make money is to make accessories that go with the doll, like clothes, cars, the house, and it's like once you get hooked on one, you have to get the other, is how they put it.
Right. This project was a great project, as I said. Tell me about the sort of idea behind putting this together. There are a lot of elements in this project, a lot of visual elements, graphics. How did you conceive this as a big project?
Yes, definitely a lot of teamwork. We had an incredible editor and photographer and designer I got to work with. But, you know, it started off with identifying the various dream houses we wanted to talk about, and you know, covered 60 years basically. So we tried to get one almost about for every decade. And then after that, I was doing research, kind of asking the question of, okay, what was happening with women and American real estate per each era? And then once I had those like themes outlined, we got together and we storyboarded. Like, for example, the section on the sexual revolution, we're like, how do we get this doll to illustrate that? So we came up with this idea of Ken would walk up to Barbie in her townhouse and hold up a rose. And we did that for each year that we were talking about. And eventually we flew out to Mattel. They gave us access to their archives, and we made these stop motion videos of that actually happening.
Wow, that's amazing. So what did you learn? We're in 2023. What era are we in with the Barbie dream house now? What would you say?
I mean, I think it's still an era of aspiration. Today, the conversation around homeownership is very much about how unattainable it is, especially for young people. You know, many studies have found that homeowners today are older, whiter, and richer than they ever have been in recent years. And at the same time, Barbie has this glamorous house, and in the movie, there's 4 pink life-size dream houses, and it's all about what we still want to have, even though it's not realistic. And I kind of end the story on this note. You know, it's called a dream house for a reason. We can all dream.
Right. I found it amazing reading even the comment section. As I said, the engagement with your story was amazing. How many people in the comments said that owning a Barbie dream house made them want to own their own home eventually? Were you surprised at that at all?
I mean, it was beautiful. So many people reached out saying that. And some people would say, like, I always wanted a dream house. I never had one, but now I have my own dream house. Like, all these like touching stories, and it really hit a note. You know, it's nostalgic for a lot of people, but it's also something relevant to their present day, because we all live somewhere, you know?
Right. And I'm also wondering, you know, Ken, it's not really present in a lot of the Barbie dream houses. How did that play out for a lot of the people you spoke to in this article?
Ken's not on the deed, as I say in the story. So he was very much a side character in our article. And a lot of the women I spoke with also didn't have too much to say about Ken. One person told me kind of, you know, Barbie had everything. She was the one. Ken literally didn't have anything.
Right. that's empowering, I guess,
Yes.
for a lot of people. One of the inspirations for this article was the Barbie movie that's coming out. Tell me about that movie. I'm shocked that there's a Barbie movie. I'm wondering what it's about, actually, but maybe you can tell me a little bit about the movie and how that inspired you to write the article.
Right. I think we're all wondering what the Barbie movie is really going to be about. But I mean, in the movie, there's 4 life-size dream houses, and there have been reports that it led to a global shortage of pink paint. So you can imagine how much pink was used. But in the movie, I spoke with the set designer, and she said the idea behind these dream houses was to make them look toy-like, you know, not too realistic. If something was starting to look realistic, she'd pare it back, like use fake grass or something like that. And I don't know, we're all very curious to see it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, as the movie prepares to come out, how do you think Barbie will affect future generation of children? And also, it's not just American children, right? This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Absolutely. It seems like for now, at least, it's going to hold up the vision of homeownership as part of the American dream, as long as there continues to be dream houses. But I'd be curious to see how it evolves. You know, maybe they'll incorporate more solar panels or things like that as we get into things like climate change. And yeah, honestly, who knows where it'll go.
Thank you, Anna, for some very important context to what for many has become an impossible dream. And that's all the time we have for today's show. I'm Jeff Mays, filling in for Sam Roberts for CUNY TV.